Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown, and in this video we're going to take a look at prompt flow. So prompt flow is a very powerful tool for many reasons. It's great for prototyping. You can do evaluations in it. You can do batch inference. You can do multi-model. A lot of things, but basically it's an orchestration tool for you to take multiple LLMs or functions and string them together to really do great LLM development. So you absolutely want to learn prompt flow. I'm not a super expert in it, but I'm good enough that I can get you over a lot of the hurdles. And I found that when I was learning how to utilize it, they just had a lot of gaps in knowledge. So I'm hoping to fill those out here for you. So let's go ahead and create ourselves a prompt flow. We're not really going to use it in here, but I just want to get you exposure to it in here. And then we're going to programmatically work with it. So here when we hit create, we have a bunch of options. We have some standard ones up here and some more complex examples down below. So I'm going to go ahead and create we can do a standard flow for now. And I'm just going to write this as standard flow example. And we're going to go ahead and create this one here. We could also look at another one. So while that is creating, it creates pretty fast. I'm going to go ahead and just clone the chat Wikipedia one. So Wikipedia example. But personally, if we're working with prompt flow, we should start with as little as we can and build up, because when you work with a more complex one, it's really hard to debug it as opposed to one that you built yourself from scratch. But let's go into the standard flow example. And this doesn't cost anything as of yet to utilize it, but on the this might be collapsed for you, but on the right hand side it shows us the files that are the orchestration files to create them. Down below we actually have a graph of how things are connected together, and then we have this visual stuff here on the left hand side. So what are we looking at? Well, the first thing is we have our inputs, right? So this is what we're going to input into our flow. And then we have our outputs down below here, and that's what we're outputting out of our flow. So hopefully that makes sense there. And then here we have, this is an LLM, so this button here would be a way of adding an LLM, and then you have a function. This could be called function calling or tool use. The idea is that the LLM is going to go out to a function, right? And then that function is going to do something and then output our results. So what is this LLM doing, or this prompt flow doing? It's expecting us to input a value, okay, whatever the string we want. It says a topic, and then it's going to go to the LLM, and the LLM has its prompt document, which is written in a Jinja 2 file, okay? It's just a templating language, so I'm not the best at remembering how this templating language works, but it's pretty straightforward. And so we have a system prompt, or a system role, saying you are a bot that can tell good jokes, and the user says a joke about topic, please. So the idea is that all you have to write is the single word, and it's going to fill it in as the first reply. And so from there, it's going to pass the output of the topic here to our echo command. And so the output of this input here is going to go to here. And then it's going to go into here. It's just all it's going to do is echo it out. You don't see echo or print anywhere here, but when this runs, we're going to be able to see that information. And then the output will output that result. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and see if we can run this. So the way we need to run this is we need some kind of compute attached. Now, when we use prompt flow later on, we're going to use it in GitHub code spaces. You could do this locally as well, but the idea is that the compute being used will be whatever the developer environment's compute is. It's not using compute to utilize LLM, it's compute to make API calls. So it's not expensive compute. So if we drop this down here, we have a compute session. So go ahead and click that. I was hoping to get some options there, but it's totally fine. It's going to launch it with serverless, and we'll take a look at that later on, what those options were. But it's spinning it up on basically, I think it's a virtual machine or something like that. And after a few minutes, it'll be ready and we can evaluate it. So let's just wait a moment for that to be ready, okay? All right, so that is now ready. And I just want to show you, like, it's showing us it's running a standard 12 v2. We're not going to keep it around for very long. If we wanted to reset it, we could do that. If we want to stop it, we could do that. There's additional things here if we want to see what packages were installed. And so it's showing what Python packages, I believe these are Python packages, it needs to run this. Okay, so the idea is that if you need to bring this into your environment, you would know what it is. But let's go ahead and run this. So I probably need to put a value in here, but I'm purposely just going to run it with nothing in it. And here it says, connection joke variant is empty. So it's telling us that we have to configure these, and they aren't configured. So I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to choose a connection. Notice we have chat or completion. And I'm going to, I don't need a deployment name, yep. And we have GPT-3.5 Turbo. Now, remember that I have other deployments here. If we open this tab up, we have Cohere and GPT-3.5 Turbo. So I'm not sure as to why I cannot select anything other than GPT-3.5 Turbo, but I'm not, so I'm hoping that you can do more with more of the models, because this kind of forces you to use the open AI models. But for whatever reason right now, I don't know how we can use other models other than the open AI line, okay? We can choose a response type, so probably want text here, because that means that if we output JSON, then this thing has to be able to work with JSON. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead and go back up here and try to run it again. So we pick that prompt. Now we haven't filled in a topic, so I'm expecting that to complain, or it might just work with a blank topic. And on the right-hand side, it might show us, it'll show us here the execution. Now, what I find is in the Visual Studio Code, when we go to do it programmatically, this doesn't update in real time, even though at one point it did. At least it did not for me. It says, the input of the flow is incorrect. The value of input topic is not provided. So we have to provide the topic. So the joke could be Rome. I don't know why I keep going with Rome here. Or we'll say ancient Rome. And we'll go ahead and now run this. And I'm just waiting for that there. And we'll go down below. Well, hold on. We have our input, right? And then we have our output. And I'm just going to slowly go through here. And we don't see anything here, which is fine. But if we go down to our function here, it shows us, see our output in our echo function. It shows us, sure, why did the Roman emperor go to the Colosseum? Because he wanted to see people give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Terrible joke, not that funny. And if we go to this one here, noticing that we are seeing this output, so we can see its input, which is topic ancient Rome. This is for the joke LLM. And then its output is system metrics, completion tokens, duration, and this information, right? So it's only passing this back as the output. We also have trace, we also have logs, so nothing went wrong here. And so hopefully that gives you a clear idea of how this works. Now, over here, we can actually look at the flow, because the flow is defined in a YAML file. Up here, the flow.dag. So I'm just going to click it, turn on raw file mode so we can see it, and we'll just take a quick look at how this works. So we have our inputs, right? So is it a chat input? False. So the idea is that we could be feeding back a chat input if this is a chat conversation. Remember when we created this, we said standard flow and not a chat flow. So if we made this true, then it would feed it back, and then this basically would be a chat bot or chat agent. And then we have our outputs. So this one is a string. Then we have our nodes, and we have a Python node, right? And we're telling it where the source is. So where is the Python code located? What is its input? It's coming from joke. So this here is our output called joke, and we're getting that output there. Then another node is the LLMs, and this one's called, well, hold on here. This one's called joke, so I think it's actually referencing this one here. Yeah, because this one's a fixed fixed output, and so it's not exactly the same thing. This is making output called joke, and this here is referring to another node, which is joke, and this type is LLM, okay? And so here you can see it has a source of joke.jinja2, which is over here. That is basically its prompt document. And then for our inputs, we are using GPT-3.5 Turbo with a temperature of 1, with a top P of 1, with a max tokens. And then we have our provider connection, so it knows how to connect to it. And then we have our environment requirements.txt, things it needs to have in order to work. And it's empty, so there's nothing extra that we need. I'd be very curious if we could swap out. I bet it won't work, but I would be very curious to see if we could swap out the deployment name for the other one here, which is Cohere, right? So here we have this one, and then down below we actually have our deployment name here, I believe. And so I'm trying to copy the name, so I'm going to copy it here, and we're just going to see if we can do something we're not supposed to be able to do, right? According to the UI anyway. And so I'm going to click into this. I'm going to go back to raw file mode. Sure, save the changes. I didn't see anything changed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to swap this out. Now, the parameters could be different, so this could just mess up from the parameters alone, but I'm going to see if this works. I'm going to hit save. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and try to run this and see what happens. And we're going to find out here in a moment. It has an error, so the API deployment for this resource does not exist if you created in the last 5 minutes. So yeah, it's not letting us do it, but I wanted to show what would happen if we tried to do that. Now, again, I don't really like working in this interface. We do get something very similar in VS Code, but you know, if you're really going to use this, you're probably going to use it in a programmatic way because you want to do integrations, and so you probably don't want to do it here. There are more tools that you can add, or nodes, and these are really interesting. I haven't played around with them too much, but clearly there is multimodal stuff. So we have one for, it looks like video. I'm not sure if 4V is video versus vision, but we have vision ones and SERP, so that means it can go out and use Google and look for stuff. And it looks like we have open model on them, so maybe other ones here. Use an open model from the Azure catalog deployed to the Azure online endpoint. So maybe Cohere could be used that way. It's not technically an open source model, but you could say that it's an open model in the sense that it's accessible, because you can download it. So that might be interesting to explore. So I'm just going to click that here for a moment. You know, Cohere, I'm just going to see if we can even do it. And there are no endpoints found. So yeah, there's obviously a little bit more work to be involved. So I imagine if you had like an open source model, I would think that it would have to be on provisioned compute, and then it would have an endpoint and you would choose that there. Or maybe you could have a random compute and attach it there. I'm not 100% certain, but we kind of got the idea of what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the compute session here, because we basically learned what we want to have learned from here. So I want to go back over to prompt flows, and that's fine. I'm just going to hit confirm, and I'm done with this. That compute's sitting down. I'm just going to go ahead and hit archive. And let's go into the chat one. This one is more complex. Do not worry if you cannot make sense of this. It's just I'm trying to show you how complex these things can get. So we have our input here, and our input is it's going to input our chat history. So it's feeding back the history of the conversation we're having. Okay, and it looks like there is some predetermined history already in here. Then we have our question, which is going to be the next thing that's asked in the user role. So what is the difference between the model and the previous neural network? The idea is it's going out to a specific Wikipedia page to help it. And then we have our outputs. Okay, so not a whole lot there, but if we kind of like crawl through this, we have our inputs, and it can either go from augmented chat or to extract. So I'm not sure how it decides between the two, but let's take a look at this first one here. So this one here is an LLM, so it's going to here, probably here first, right? So you're an AI assistant reading the transcript of a conversation between an AI and a human. Given input from the conversation. The conversation history is provided in just in case of a conference. And so here they're providing examples. There's some variations on how you can do this, but this is a way. I might do it and just say like good prompt examples, bad prompt examples, or replies. But here we have example of a conversation history with human AI. I would probably call it user and assistant, but you know, it would still work both ways. And so here you see human, I want to find this, sure, how I can help you. How do I get to rock bar? Output directions to rock bar. So it's indicating that maybe it has to go out and search for something, I'm not sure. Then down below, it has, this is our conversation history for reference only. And so it's listing it out here so that the existing chat history is going to be displayed. So we're saying input the chat history, and then we're printing it out here so that the bot knows or the agent knows, because I don't know if you remember which video it was in, but I explained that every time you're entering or you're sending stuff to the LLM, you have to keep feeding it the previous history, and so it has to go somewhere, and so they're placing it here. Okay, and then the human response is the next one here, and then they're indicating, hey, give us the output, right? So hopefully that's very clear. Then we have get wiki from URL. So here we are seeing, what do we have? We have entity string count to, and if we carefully look at it, it looks like it's searching for an entity here. How would it know from here to do that? So, because we have a question, right? And then we have this entity here. All right. So I'm not sure exactly how it's doing that, but anyway, let's continue on here. So it's clearly making a request. So it's using requests, which is a way of just making requests out to a page. It's using Beautiful Soup to parse the page. So that is a probably an XML parser, HTML parser, and it goes there, and then it's extracting out text. And here you can see that it's looking through stuff like references and things like that, and then it's outputting information. So we have get wiki URI, then we have search results from URL. Okay, so fetch text content from URL. Okay. Process search results. And then it goes back over to an LLM. So you're a chatbot having a conversation with a human. Give the following extracted parts of a long document and a question. Create a final answer with references with sources. And then that's our output. So will this work well with GPT-3.5? I'm not sure. But let's give it a go and see what happens. So before we can do anything, we need some compute. So let's go ahead and start our compute. This time I'm going to go to advanced settings so you can see. So we have serverless or compute instances. Here it's 19 cents an hour. So you could go to something more cost effective. I'm going to just stick with this because I want something that's reliable here today. You can tell it to shut off after a certain amount of time. I'm not really worried about it. I'm watching it very carefully. We have the base image. Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll apply and wait for our compute session to start. Okay, so we're going to wait for that. Okay. All right, so that compute is now ready. And so we're going to go ahead and get the chat. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to work for me, but I'm going to say let's explore it and try to make sense of this more complex model. Again, I think that if you're working with this, it's better to build up from a base flow so you can really see what you're doing. So here we have an existing chat history that was already inputted for us. Okay, and then this is the conversation that's already being here. So let's go hit enter. It's already going to complain because I have to configure. I have to configure these connections. So we'll go ahead and we'll first try to use GPT-3.5 Turbo. I think the response is supposed to be text because I don't think it is taking in JSON, but we'll just go through here and figure this out. We do have two LLMs nodes in here. And so we can go ahead and select those there. So just give it a moment. There we go. And we're probably going to try this out with GPT-4 because I'm not sure if this was ever designed to run with 3.5, but we'll see what happens here. We'll go ahead and hit run. And I think this time it should work, or it should do something. Now there's some way to trace it. Sometimes it shows here and says you can trace it here. I don't find that experience being very good, and it's also in preview. So we might just have to walk ourselves through this to find out what's going on. Yeah, it has the view trace. I'm not even going to bother clicking that because it doesn't work half the time. And I want to see something here, but if we don't see it, oh, look, it actually came back. Wow. So when I ran this before, it did not come back with anything. So just understand that if you're having issues with this and you don't see anything here, I had the experience before, but now it is working. So I'm sorry, I don't have specific information about technical differences between GPT-4 and previous neurals. I'd like you to know more about the technical distinctions, and it got the sources, so it actually did work. Okay, so I thought it wasn't going to work. But let's go through here and walk through what's happening here. So we have, I'll just close this out here and go to the top. So we have this, and I think that it will show us the outputs here, yeah. And so we can kind of look and see what the input is. So the input here is, what is the difference between this model and the previous one? And then we have the chat history. Okay, and this is coming in as JSON, and it is JSON up here, right? And then down below, over here, we have our output. So our output here is, can we do view full output? There we go. Output is, it seems like the user is asking for a comparison between the current model. Okay. The next query would be comparison between GPT-4 and previous model. Let's go over to here. Let's go down and take a look at its input. So we go here, and it says, it seems, so it says entity. So even though we chose text, it's still, the entity is so I'm thinking basically the first parameter is whatever, because you can name it whatever you want maybe, because the other one, it wasn't called entity, it was called something else. So it seems like the user is asking for a comparison between the model and the previous neural models. The next query could be, etc. Count to. Okay, and then we have our output here. So I want to go and take a look here, because we have entity, right? Oh, okay. You know, for some reason I thought this was like very specific. I thought this was going to be something like Rome or something. But here it's actually searching Wikipedia and then returning the results. That's why I was confused earlier. I didn't clue in that that was doing a search. So that actually now makes sense. And so we have our output here. Let's open this up. And so here we have this, and you can see that it's putting this in here as a result. And we could probably grab this as such and try it ourselves. I'm not sure what we get as a result. Can we do this? And so this is what it's returning back, these three options. Okay, so that's starting to make sense. And then we're going to go down to the next one here. And let's look at its inputs. And so in our inputs, it's bringing back that list of URLs. And so this one is supposed to search results from the URL. So then I'm guessing what it's doing is it's probably going to go into each one and parse it. So we go here and we have, yeah, so it's grabbing, I think, each of this. And I think it's trying to, maybe it's grabbing this text or it's grabbing this. Maybe it's trying to get the links to it. Yeah, it's going to beautiful soup, PUL stuff. And then it's going, so I think it's going to, yeah, it's going to in each one of these URLs. So I think it's extracting the URL out here, going into here, and then it's looking for sources, maybe references or sources here, somewhere in here, and it's going to try to return those. So PUL, you know, if you wrote this yourself, you probably know because you'd be walking through it, right? And so these are functions, but this tool marker is telling it which function is actually being called. So I believe that's all this does here. You mark that there. And so all these other functions are external, but this is your entry point into this one. So here it has URL list and the count. So if we go to our inputs here, yeah, we have URL list and their account. And then we have our outputs. And so our outputs is outputting. Whoops, let's just open that up. It's outputting us some links, or at least it's outputting one. So we have one, or this is our results here. It says there were no results matching your query. Oh, really? So let's go back. Ah, it says here. I mean, there clearly is 3 here. It seems like asking comparison between. Okay, so I don't know. It doesn't look like it perfectly executed, but I mean, it's still working, right? We'll go down to process our search results. So we have content and source and URL. So this looks like it's just formatting to content and source. So we have our input here. There's search results. Not exactly what we wanted, I don't think. And then we have content. There were no search results. And then The other one here, source is the URL. And this one's the augmented chat. So you are a chatbot having a conversation. And so now it's taking in that input. So let's go to our input here. Question, chat history. And now we're providing more contextual information, like the sources probably. And then we get our output. Okay, so I think in theory this thing did not work correctly. We could deploy the other model and see if we get better results, or we could also just change our input here, but we'd have to take a look here and play around with this. We'd have to say something like, when did Rome when did Rome fall, right? If I do this, what do I get? Okay. So this might be more interesting. I want to go back to the chat here. All right, so I'm going to go and try to change the question. I'm not sure why this is like fixed like this. We restart the, I don't want to restart the compute session. But I'm trying to, well, let's just put the next one in here. Let's see what happens. Because I would think that it would just start where it was, right? Back. Yeah, now I put the input in here. Okay, great. So it just replaced it, which is fine. And so we'll see if we get anything here. And so the results back here are not great. Right, so sources, Wikipedia, didn't really help. Like, I think we're expecting some text here and then the source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy a GPT-4 model. If you're worried about cost, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and deploy. I mean, do we need GPT-4o or 4? Because these are vision models. Also, I don't think we can deploy this other than in batch. But let's take a look here. I would like to deploy 4 mini. But we'll take a look here and see what we have. Global batch. And that's not going to work for me here today. So I'm going to go back to our model catalog. And even though GPT-4o is overkill, I'm going to deploy this one. And hold on here, let's just read it. By matching the intelligence of GPT-4 Turbo, it is remarkably more efficient, delivering at twice the speed at half the cost. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'll go with global standard, which actually is really good. We'll go with global standard here. And what we'll do is go to prompt flow. I believe that's deployed. It's pretty fast to deploy those. And we'll switch out. We'll switch these out here. So we'll go to GPT-4o. And then down below here, we'll go to GPT-4o. And so we have those there. And now I'm going to go and save this because we made some changes here. And I feel like if we change it, we probably have to deploy it again. Deploy your flow to a managed online endpoint. No, I don't want that. That's if we wanted to make it available to an endpoint that we could hit. I mean, that'd be interesting to do, but not necessarily something I want to do this moment. And so I'm not sure. I'm going to restart the compute session. I just don't trust it to be utilizing the correct thing. So I'm just going to restart that and give it a moment, okay? All right, so we restarted that. And you have GPT-4o down here, and we'll go and check the other one. And so I'm just seeing if we might get a better result here. So let's open that chat again. When did Rome fall? I'm assuming that it just doesn't know about previous history. Hopefully it's not picking up any of that. I'm not sure how we reset the chat. There's no option to reset it here. And we will see what happens. Hopefully it has an easier time. I'm not really worried if we can get this working because, I said before I had trouble with it, but the fact that I was actually getting a response was interesting. So just curious to see if we can get it to work here. But you can see it's really working hard. Um, and this could be because of the models being on, basically they're on shared compute with other customers. And so if they're being heavily used for whatever reason, sometimes we just have this thing where it just keeps running and we don't have any result, right? So I'm just gonna hang tight and see what happens here, okay? All right, so I've been waiting quite a long time and it's just not completing. So this is where we can run into struggles with it. And again, this isn't something that I've built, so I'm not that interested in getting this to correctly work, but it was an interesting way to go and explore working with prompt follows. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and just archive this. I also stopped that compute there. And we're gonna stop the video here. And then the next one, we're going to work with it programmatically. So I have a repo here that I've already created. It's just a plain repo that's private. You're going to need to do the same. But yeah, we're going to learn how to get set up and try to build our own prompt flow programmatically as opposed to just in this UI. Okay, see you soon. Ciao.